your overall thoughts on where we are right now with NIL, because I think when I talked to you last, that had kind of just become a thing and we didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a lot of evolution since. Jake, it's still the wild, wild west, but I think we're probably going to run into some sort of structure, some sort of rules, if you will, because things have just gotten so out of control. Your overall thoughts on NIL and what do you think the future holds with it?
Well, Chris, I think we've got to be able to separate, a few things when we're discussing this, because to me, number one, you open Pandora's box. It's going to be really tough to close that. There's only one way to close that, and that's going to be through federal law. Yeah. Because if you let it back to the states, and I'm a firm believer, you know me, I don't get political, but I want less government. That's what I want. Right. But if you kick it back to the states, these states aren't going to do anything, and you're about to have so many lawsuits from these athletes when you try and put borders on this. The lawyers there, they've already got it written up. They're just, you hear that the NCAA is going to say, all right, well, boosters aren't going to be able to do NIL. Well, again, I'm not an economist. I talk sports for a living. But aren't the boosters the ones paying for these NIL deals? The boosters are the ones that own the car dealerships. The boosters are the ones that own the restaurants. The boosters are the ones that have the money. So it's really the same thing. So unless a federal law comes down that puts a cap on it, if you say, okay, boosters, you can't do NIL, what does that mean? Like, so who's going to do NIL? Like, so just the school does NIL? That's not a great idea, because guess who gives the school money? The boosters. It's impossible to separate the two. Yeah. The second thing is, to me, there's a big difference in NIL for kids coming out of high school and NIL for kids in the transfer portal. Yeah. The way high school recruiting works, while there is rampant cheating, surprise, surprise, even before NIL, even with NIL, it's a lot freer market because you're not taking somebody from somebody else's roster. It's a lot harder to sign with a school than get out of that letter of intent and then be able to sign with another school within the same time frame I'm coming out of high school. When you're doing an NIL deal after leaving a team like this Jordan Addison situation, and you are moving lateral or up, I've got a big problem with that. I've got a big problem with that, because if you're going down, that's one thing. Nobody that's dominating at LSU is going to go play at Louisiana Lafayette because they got a better NIL deal from ULL. That's not happening. There has to be a cap, which there won't be because they can't do it now because they unleashed Pandora's box and they get sued if they do it now. There should be a cap on NIL if you're in the transfer portal. Yeah. So even Spencer Radler, you're going from Oklahoma to USC. That's a lateral move. You're not going down. If you're going to make that move, there has to be a cap on the NIL. Or you think you've seen tampering? You haven't even seen tampering. You don't understand tampering. And it'll only happen to the big boys will get the best out of it. And USC, make no mistake, they've got bankroll right up there with Bama and Texas and everybody. So you're not, all of a sudden, you're not going to see Southern Miss just start balling, because of NIL. Right. It's only going to help the people at the top. So I don't know what they can do now. We've had the two most transformative things in college athletics since me and you have ever been alive, meeting at the same time in NIL and the transfer portal. Yeah. And they've combined together like the mega tornadoes on the Day After Tomorrow movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and Randy Quaid. Like, he's just trying to get out of New York by now before the hurricane of frozenness comes and gets everybody. We did this to ourselves because we didn't put guardrails on it. And when you do something like that, this is what happens. They're going to try and do something. But if they don't do it by federal law, it's not going to work.
Yeah, like you said, Jake, I don't know how you go back. And I wonder, Jake, do you think that those in charge, if they could go back in time, do you think that they would say, you know what, maybe NIL is not such a good idea? Maybe we'll just keep operating the way that we've been doing it for so long.
I think they would have put heavy guidelines, heavy caps on it, and they'd restrict it. But the thing is, again, who's going to enforce it? Yeah. The NCAA?
But that also, Jake, to your point, that just to me shows the incompetence of the NCAA, that you roll out something like that's so massive and game changing, and you're like, there are just no rules.
They basically
who else does that?
Chris, they did two at the same damn time
with no plan. There's just no plan.
With no plan. That'd be like me and my fiance saying, okay, all right, you're pregnant. You just had twins. Now you just gave birth to them. Now we don't know what to do. Let's just let them out the hospital. Let's just hope they figure it out. Yeah. They can't even walk, but let's just let them out of the hospital.